Real talk. This isn't about feeling sorry for ourselves because Hispanic families are homeowners and that percentage continues to grow. But growing up with not seeing the steps of home ownership can feel impossible. So today we're going to talk about that process and how it makes you feel.
Welcome to From Zero. This podcast is for people who didn't grow up with a safety net but learn responsibility early. If you are a first generation like myself or grew up in an immigrant household and learned life before understanding money, this episode is for you. We're breaking down how that pressure has shaped many of us and how real estate can feel both intimidating and yet powerful, and how ownership can become a leverage to many of us.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about where this really starts for a lot of us, how we grew up seeing money. Okay, so Fidelity Stats reports that 56% of Americans don't discuss family finance with their parents. This relates a lot to me because growing up, my parents try to guard me from our financial status. I would hear stuff like, ahorita no podemos, no hay dinero, so we can't right now. There's no money right now. And I never understood why. Later on, this leads to you building conclusions of, okay, this is impossible, or money is a bad thing. You start associating it with a negative perspective. But it every time I would ask my parents if I could borrow some money or if I can have money to go out to the movies or whatever it may be, I would stress so much about it. I didn't want to hear them say no, and I didn't want to also stress my parents because of always hearing these words of no se puede ahorita. And now I feel like I am much older and I can see money differently, but that also takes time. When my husband and I bought our first home and we went through that journey, it was a journey to see exactly how we can build our finance and learning how to budget from prioritizing our skills, from prioritizing our what our priorities were for buying, saving, and then later on, we've been improving but it's little by little where we now feel like we have seen the difference. But I understand that my parents did what they could and did their best at what they knew in that moment, which they felt like protecting me from that finance status that we were at was the best thing. But now that I am much older, I know that I can grow from that and show my children the best budgeting skills that I know.
Yeah, I think it's similar for me. According to some stats, 71% helps parents with money decisions. I didn't grow up just like you around conversations about investing, equity, long-term wealth. Those weren't things that we would talk about in an immigrant household. It was mostly like stuff in the now, like how are we going to pay bills? We have to save money for this. The goal wasn't wealth, it was just stability. We can't we can't fall behind in this stuff. It's just working in the now. So watching and doing a lot of translating. I know a lot of people can relate to that.
Yes,
a lot of Hispanics having to translate for parents who didn't know much English. So translating bills, paperwork, watching them stress about the numbers and not necessarily what we can do long term in terms of investing and stuff like that. Even when it comes to home ownership, it's mostly like this house they're going to keep forever. That's the goal. It's never, okay, we're going to buy this house, invest, buy another house, and keep building that long-term generational wealth. I know a lot of Gen Z, a lot of first gen know this feeling that you have to grow up fast. You have all of this weight to carry, and you become the helper, the fixer, the translator, the planner. But I also think that pressure doesn't necessarily break us. It just trains us to be better, learn from what they did, and grow from it.
Exactly.
So, some questions that we have is, what's one financial task that you took on your family for your family before the age of 18?
I didn't take any tasks per se. I was more it was more of what I had to do for myself. In this case, I had to pay my gas for my car and pay my college tuition. Um, so that was mostly what I focused on when it came to my finance.
Yeah, I think
For
for
you?
me, I think it had to do with a lot of budgeting and tracking. That's one
Okay.
of the things. So we had to create realistic budgets growing up, finding ways to save money,
Mhm.
like thrifting or coupons, all those little things, and identifying opportunities where we can save the most money at the time. Also, another thing was saving for family goals, saving for like an emergency fund,
Mm,
saving for, it was always saving. That was one of the biggest things, saving for a trip, like family goals
mhm.
and all that stuff. I remember as a kid, my mom used to take money from my piggy bank when I wouldn't realize and everything, because that money was used for much larger things and
Oh,
everything. So those
okay.
were two of the main things that I took on before the age of
Yeah.
18.
I feel like I didn't come across budgeting until college, and it
Really?
sounds crazy, but yeah, I was probably 19, and I was in a, I think it was for a governmental class, something like that, but we
Mm.
had to be talking about budgeting, and, we yeah, that's the first time I knew what was budgeting, and they listed out your expenses and what was put into your savings, um, but from there, I was like, "Okay, I need to do more and learn more about this."
Yeah, no, for me, it was starting from a young age of
That's really good.
having
That's
to
really
save
good.
money. Yeah, it's good until I stopped and I don't budget as much as I
But
should.
that's
But
good that you that was implemented super
mhm,
young.
yeah,
And are you gonna pass that on to your kids eventually?
I hope so. I think it's important to budget your expenses. Even
Mhm.
when it comes to home ownership, budgeting and planning is one of the most important steps when purchasing a property. And I wish more people knew that.
Mhm.
So we kind of broke these sections into three segments. The first section that we talked about right now was just the first gen pressure in our
Mhm.
own lives. And this next section is about the evolving money habits going from survival to strategy. Many first gens have to unlearn financial lessons that were taught at home because, again, those were financial playbooks and not wealth playbooks. For
Right.
them, it's like they're coming from nothing, so they have to plan for the now, just like I was discussing how they they're worried about paying current bills,
Mhm.
and not necessarily for the future of, okay, what's going to happen in the future. It's like for now, we have to do it now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that survival mindset,
mhm,
is tied to ancestral, experiences with the scarcity,
mhm.
and, we're trying to break those, and I know it's gonna take time, but we're gonna just pass that on, um, that money is evil concept that we have embedded in us, but we're gonna start seeing as money is abundant and how we can build that through investing.
I want to touch a little bit more on that term, money is the root of all evil, because I hear it so much, literally everywhere, especially in the Hispanic and Christian Catholic households, where it's like, oh, money is evil. You shouldn't worry so much about money, or you shouldn't be concerned about you shouldn't want so much money.
Mhm.
When actually, the term or the Bible verse that it comes from is for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, meaning the obsession or the greed of money is what's bad. But money in itself isn't bad. It's a resource that people have to utilize.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think Hispanics get so stuck on, is the idea that, oh, we shouldn't have much money. Like,
Mhm.
no, we should, we should invest that
Mhm.
money and use it to not be obsessed with it or be greedy about it, but to improve our,
Yes.
our status.
Use it as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I read this podcast, and that's one thing they did mention. It was using money, seeing money as a tool. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Me, myself, sometimes I don't see that. I think we instead tie ourselves emotionally to that spending, and we don't prioritize what money can do for us. Like I said, seeing it as a tool. So in this podcast, they divided it into three, you can say, categories. 75% of it, it's a 75-10 rule. So 75 75, 15, 10% rule. 75 is maximum you can spend. So this is going to your bills and any vacation that you might do with your family. 15 is the minimum you can invest, which is that is making you wealthy. And then 10 is the minimum you can save. That's to protect you. So yeah, I think this is something that I'll probably be doing for myself. The 75, 10, 75, 15, and 10 rule. Sorry, I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. But yeah, I really like how he split that up. It's about spending, saving, and investing, and how that's all protecting you and building you constant wealth.
Yeah, I think for me it was actually the opposite. My mom used to give me as a kid like 3 envelopes that I would save, and I would have the percentage. So 70% for me was saving, 20% was spending, and 10% was giving. So either to the church or donating that money to a cause, So it was never actually about investing. It was always saving. Saving was the priority, and that statistic of 2/3 of first generation Americans had to unlearn financial lessons from their parents, because it's not something that I necessarily have to unlearn, but I just have to learn to coexist with the idea of investing as well. So saving and investing, doing both. And again, saving is powerful, but saving alone does not create generational wealth. And I think that's something that I had to unlearn, at least for myself, that saving is not going to make money. Investing will. And so I have to apply both, because I tend to spend a lot too. So I spend way too much than I should. We're going to talk about it a little bit more, how social media plays a big role in how we spend our money. So let's talk about what's holding Gen Z back from buying, even when we want to.
Yep. So majority of Gen Z, I feel like, that confidence in investing, and they see it as a big step that maybe they can't accomplish. So it says that 28% of Gen Z lack confidence in financial skills. And 60% of Gen Z worry that they never might buy a home. That is I think that's a big percentage. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with inflation. 19%. So over the past years, from 2019 to 2023, 19% of that inflation has went up. So that's a crazy amount. And I see why a lot of young people are feeling that restriction of like, I am not going to be able to buy a home. This is too much. Inflation is crazy. And yeah, I'm just going to stay renting.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's fear, I think, that we will not be able to buy a home because of all that inflation. I remember going to the store, and my siblings and I would compare these chocolate bars that we would get from the store. They were like huge chocolate bars for $1. And as the years went by, they would get smaller, but the prices would go up. And it's like, no, like now it's like this much for like $2. And it's like, so you can see it like wherever you go, that prices are increasing. And many people see it when it comes to the prices of houses, how you can see from 2021, like the prices skyrocketed and everything. And people were Gen Z now reaching that age where they can start buying. They have that worry that they're not going to buy. But you actually have a really great story when it comes to home ownership, because you're Gen Z and you were able to buy with your husband. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So like I had mentioned before in the beginning, my husband and I bought in 2022, I believe. So we were living with my parents and for 3 months, and then my mother-in-law for 6 months. we obviously didn't like being, it didn't feel like our home. We needed something that was ours. It was nerve-wracking though, even the thought of us buying, because it felt like, what if, we can't pay for that mortgage? What if we are not able to, make enough to buy food and pay the bills? And what if we can't? It was just a lot of what ifs that
Mm-hmm.
holded us for a little bit. But it becomes, there's a breaking point, I feel, where you have to move out and you have to take that step, or else that you're not going to move out of there, or you're going to get stuck. And how are you going to do better than where you're at? And a lot of people overall do really do want to do better. So yeah, we got our home in 2021. And a lot of Hispanic families have those are very, very protective and are telling you to wait or hold up, or it's not the right moment, or wait for the houses to drop, which I understand that they're saying it out of fear and protecting, but you also have to know exactly your goal and how to dive in, so that in the long run it's beneficial. It's beneficial and you build that equity.
Mm. Yeah, so we actually have a couple practical steps that we recommend that you guys take when going into that first purchase with.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go in with confidence. One of them is clarity over perfection. You don't need perfection. You don't have to have the perfect credit score. You don't have to have a lot of down payment. You don't need that 20%, that common number that people say that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You can go as low as 3% down, and even in some cases 0% down
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to purchasing a house. Budgeting, we were talking about how important it is to have a good budget, something that doesn't restrict you necessarily, but also you don't push that budget to the end. I've seen in many cases, they get pre-qualified and they want to go to the highest amount.
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases, it isn't best beneficial for that client, because
Mm-hmm.
then they start, during that process of paying those monthly mortgages, they're like, well, I'm struggling,
Yes.
So just being mindful of that and budgeting correctly.
Can I say something from
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that one thing we did well when we were buying, we went only off of my husband's income. We didn't do both. And I feel like sometimes people tend to do that so that they can buy that nice house, or they have more access to the 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and all this other stuff that you really don't necessarily need. You need to, more than anything, know exactly what income you can go based off for that. If you're not able to, maybe your partner's not able to work and you don't have that extra income, then you are at least know that you can pay off your home because you qualified with that one income.
Yeah, that's a good tactic. Another thing that I think is really important is choosing the right team to help you manage. You need a good agent, one that knows the market,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, that knows how everything runs, and a good loan officer, someone who's going to educate you and be honest about your finances and everything, not someone that's going to tell you, oh, you can qualify for this, even though you're already stretching your budget as it is. Someone who's going to be honest with you and say, like, hey, this is what you qualify for, this is the payments, and just honesty straight up. And so
Mm-hmm.
an agent that's going to find the perfect house for you. Again, like she mentioned, you don't need that 5-bed, 3 baths with a big acre lot and a pool right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
starting off with your first home. It doesn't have to be like your dream home necessarily,
Right.
but a home that you can live in, fix it up, wait a couple years, wait until prices go up,
Building that equity.
building that equity that you need, and then you sell that.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, you buy another one, then you buy your perfect house.
Yeah.
It's about starting small, not necessarily buying that big house right away. You can buy a condo. I think those are great for married, like just recently married, or
Mm-hmm.
just you want to live alone, you want to stop renting. Those condos
Yeah.
are a great way to start your journey to generational wealth.
Of course.
And our last tip is ownership isn't all or nothing. Your first home, again, doesn't have to be your forever home. It's just the first step. It's your bridge.
Mm-hmm. Another thing we did want to talk about was that social media temptation.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because I feel like it gets to, this might not only be Gen Z. I feel like since social media has been such a big thing over the past, what, like 5 years maybe, it's been a big temptation to everyone. Instagram shows, what your friends are doing, what they've bought, the next, new thing. And then we have TikTok on the other side
Mm-hmm.
that's showing you this amazing new product and how it works and how it's going to help you. And so you then kind of use that as a reason to buy these things, and you go more on your emotions than the right thing you need to do right now for that budgeting plan.
Yeah, I was telling her that like 2 weeks ago, I bought a pair of shoes because I saw them on TikTok and everything, and I was scrolling and it just kept showing up. And I'm like, do I really need them? And part of me said yes, because I was like, I really need new gym shoes, even though I have like
How
3
many
pairs.
pairs?
I already have like 3, 4 pairs of gym shoes already, but I'm like, I really need this. And then I bought them and I love them, but did I really need them? Like,
Yeah.
no. But then it just keeps on going. Like, I already bought this. And then I'm like, okay, my credit card's already out. I can buy this too. And then I just got to buy a couple more things, So I think that's a big issue for many of us, is that need for spending, especially because it's on social media and
Oh,
you see
yeah.
like everyone's posting about it.
Yeah, it really works.
It really works. Yeah. Like, everyone's going live with their TikToks on selling stuff, and sometimes it does catch your attention because they give you all those sales, but is it really necessary? No, I think we
Yeah.
can use that money instead to invest in ourselves and invest
Yes.
for our future instead of going and diving into those social media
Yeah.
temptations.
I think there's a lot of like beauty standards out there, and women kind of get attracted to that. So all those beauty products that are out there, and you want to buy them. Why? Because obviously you want to look pretty and be pretty and feel that helps build your confidence. And so now we also get hooked into um, those materialistic stuff that honestly at the end of the day, there is cheaper products out there, or even a loophole where you don't necessarily need to buy that. And then you kind of just lose sight of that budgeting plan with that social media advertisement that's out there. Yeah.
But actually, it's an interesting thing because 50% of Gen Z actually prefer saving over investing, which is actually makes sense. I mean, I think I spend more than I save and invest, but Gen Z typically like to save over investing. And we can see that when it comes to home ownership too, because we don't have that financial literacy yet to where we feel confident enough in saying like, okay, we're going to invest in our house and we're going to coming up with a game plan to use that house as a way to make more money, that fear of like, oh, like it's not going to work out,
Right. Yeah.
And another fun fact is that 49.9% of Hispanic home ownership, they own homes. Nearly half of the Hispanic families already own their homes. So ownership to the Hispanic isn't rare, but it's just building on top of that. Because as I was saying, many tend to live in that house for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of equity in there, but they don't know how to use that equity and selling that house, taking the money, investing in another property bigger and better. I have an uncle, same thing, who's had his house for the longest time. He bought one house right in like 2000, like really cheap, and he stayed there for the longest time, because of that fear and lack of financial literacy to want to invest and everything. And I think if you want to build or make money in this country, you have to invest. You don't make money saving.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we live in a world where the rich and the financial savvy people are going to be the ones winning. So we at least need to back ourselves up with that knowledge of what it is to build that wealth, forever wealth.
Yeah, and again, money isn't bad, No.
Yeah, and it's a long game. I mean, I'm already thinking, okay, when I'm older, how am I going to be paying all my bills? I don't want to be working. I mean, maybe some still do something with real estate, but nothing heavy, nothing crazy. Just some still working on stuff that I like and helping people and whatever I can do. But I mean, for instance, my dad. He's been in construction for since I can remember, since I was a year old. Uh, which I kind of didn't mention, but so I came here when I was a year old. I am an immigrant, um, but I just remember my dad working every day constantly, and he's tiring himself out. I can notice it in his face. So the thing is, when he gets to that point where he can't work anymore, how is he going to help himself? Where is that money coming from, and where is that going to continue? So now that I see that in my dad, I want to be okay when I'm 70 and 80 and not having to worry about how are my bills going to get paid. So now that we're here, at least we are competent enough to know that, okay, we need to start building this. The sooner the better, I believe. If you are able to do it sooner, I think that's a good plan to go.
Yeah, especially for entrepreneurs, people in real estate, agents, they're making good money right now. But if you don't use that money to invest for long term,
Mhm.
especially for entrepreneurs who don't have that 9 to 5 and don't have that pension waiting for them at the end of when they're done working, invest that money. I think the best investment is home ownership,
Yeah.
and buying that house,
Yeah.
waiting a couple years, and then pulling that money, invest in something else. So we actually have some what we call rapid fire questions, some really quick questions that we want to answer. What's one home ownership myth you want to bust?
One home ownership myth that I want to bust would be that 20% that you need 20% down to buy a house. A lot of people don't realize that there are options with less than that down, especially right now when it's a buyer's market and there's a lot of houses on the market. We need that to go down. So what are we doing? Putting more programs out there to help those buyers.
Yeah, you don't need that 20% down. And right now sellers are offering a lot of concession right now, which is helping with closing costs. I think another home ownership myth is that you have to be like a certain age, or you have to have like a certain life, I guess you could say, before buying a house. You can buy a house right after college. You don't need, typically you need that 2-year requirement that your loan officers need. But actually combining your transcript degrees and a job offer letter, you can actually buy a home right after college. It's just about, again, planning and budgeting and having that some money saved for your down payment, and finding a job right after college, and you can buy a house, which I think is pretty cool, and it's not something that many people hear about. Especially that when you buy that house, you're saying like, oh, maybe I can't afford it. Well, you can have roommates. They pay part of that, and you're set. And then you're already building your investment for the future. And so, yeah, you don't need to be a specific age. You can buy right after college. I also think it's typical to think that you need to be married to have that 2 household income to qualify for a house. Buy a house with your sister. Buy a house with your best friend. You can buy a house on your own. Like, again, it's about having a good agent and a good lender that's going to help you through this process, and just going there and asking, like, okay, what do I need? Some people are just afraid to ask, like, what do I need to qualify? But it's just about asking the right questions and having someone. And even if you can't qualify now, just setting a game plan for when you can. Like, maybe your credit's low, or maybe you don't have enough money saved. Well, having an agent and a good lender to guide you through those steps is going to make home ownership so much faster and easier in the future. So it doesn't have to be right now. It's just, again, just taking that time to ask questions. Ask one of us. We're always here to help, going through those steps with you. That's our job, to make sure that this is as smooth and as easy as possible, and then we'll be there with you every step of the way.
That's a great point. So our next question is, where did it go? If you could go back to teach your 18-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Um, I think it would be to stop overspending. I think that's one of the biggest ones for me, that as soon as I would get a paycheck, I would start spending money right away, and instead of spending, or even instead of like just keeping my money in my bank account, investing. I was always, again, I didn't have that financial literacy to say like, hey, like I know what to do with my money. I was always scared about what to do with my money. So instead of saving or investing, I would spend it. So that's not good. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mine would probably be learning how to budget from an early start. I think you can start teaching your kids super young, maybe 5. They start knowing you can, even with the dollar, you can split that up to the 75, 15, and 10 rule and kind of start going from there. But yeah, budgeting really early on would have been a great lesson that I would want my 18-year-old self to know.
Yep. So if you could get 2 things out of today, it's learn to budget and learn to invest. There's so many YouTube videos out there that teach you how to invest. So not those like quick things that you see on TikTok, like, oh, put money in this and that, but just learning little by little through all those YouTube
There's
videos and
great podcasts
great
out there.
podcasts out there that can help you manage your money properly, and investing little by little. It can be $10, $15 a day. It doesn't have to be much. Just learning to utilize your money well, instead of, again, saving doesn't create wealth. It doesn't. It's good, but it's not going to
It's not
make
the full picture. No.
It's not, So I hope this episode helps you guys out. I hope you guys learned something. If you guys have any questions, we're always here to help.
Yeah, and just drop down a comment, and if you have any tips on budgeting, or if what age you bought your first house, anything like that you would like to share with us and your story, then we'd love to hear it. So thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
See you on the next one.